Well, greetings, everybody. So I'd like to show you a few problems about fractions and how they relate to percentages. Okay, so I'll start with this problem here. It says find fractional notation for 45%. So to do that, let's first learn what does the word percent really mean. Okay, so the word percent means parts out of 100. So here's how we can go through this problem, converting 45% to a fraction. So 45% means 45 out of 100. And that can be written as a fraction, 45 on top, 100 on the bottom. Now, so that's the fraction. That's not what I'll put in here, though. I won't put 45 over 100 because the instructions say to simplify the answer. All right. What does that mean? Well, so I've already made a video about how to simplify or reduce fractions. Okay, so I'll refer you back to that one. But here's what that would look like. So to reduce the fraction 45 over 100, in order to get a simplified answer to put in here, I factor the number 45 as much as I can. I factor it down to 9 times 5. Then I factor the 9 as 3 times 3. So that makes it 3 times 3 times 5. I do the same thing with 100. I factor it down as much as I can. I'll say first, 100 is 4 times 25. 4 is 2 times 2. 25 is 5 times 5. So I got to factor it down all the way. Then if there's any matching pairs, top and bottom, I cross them out. The only matching pairs I see is a 5 and a 5. Just one matching pair of 5s, which I cancel. That leaves me with 3 times 3, which is 9 on the top. And then 2 times 2 times 5, which is 20 on the bottom. Okay, so that's reduced. I've broken it down as much as I can, canceled everything that was common. So let's, instead of 45 over 100, what we're looking for is 9 out of 20. Okay, so I'll put that in and I'll check it and it'll be right. Alright, so let's look through and do a few others though. So here, this is the same type of problem. I'll let you do that one. I want to find this one, okay, where we convert a percent to a decimal. Let's see, here we go. It says change the percent to a decimal number. All right, so we can do it this way. What does percent mean once again? I'll convert it to a fraction. I'll start that way. So 58% means 58 parts out of 100, or 58 on top, 100 on the bottom. So that's a fraction. How do we convert a fraction to a decimal? So again, that's in that other video right here. It'll tell you how to convert fractions to decimals, but what it's going to say is that to convert a fraction to a decimal, we just divide. We take 58 and divide it by 100. Now I have my calculator on my computer right here, and I can take 58 and divide by 100. See what I get? It's 0.58. That's the decimal we're looking for. But as a shortcut, you could do like this. Instead of, say, use your calculator to divide by 100, anytime you divide a number by 100, you move the decimal point that's already in the number left 2 spaces. So there's a decimal point in 58 right there. It says 58.0. We just don't write the point 0. Dividing that by 100 moves it 1 space to the left, 2 spaces to the left, give me 0.58. That's the decimal for 58%. And you can look at it like this. You can say, oh, I can convert to a percent. From a percent to a decimal, just move this decimal 2 spaces to the left. And that'd be true. Okay? Alright, so that's how it's done there. Let's see. 58% is 0.58, right? Okay. And if I want a little more practice with that to show you, I can do a similar question down here. What do you think 38% as a decimal is? 0.38. If I divide that by 100, I'm going to move the decimal point that's already there, left 2 spaces. 38 becomes 0 decimal point 38. You get the idea? Let's do one more. 87.443%. Well, that would be just like the one I showed you. You would take that number, you would write a 100 underneath it, If you wanted to get the calculator to divide it, you could, but what's going to happen? That decimal point that's right there will move 2 spaces to the left. So, okay, what's it going to be? 0.87443. That's what this number is, being a percent with its decimal point moved 2 spaces to the left, giving me a decimal. That's converting a percent to a decimal. Okay, simplify it. Well, it's already simple. There's nothing I can do to simplify that. So I'll just check it and it's right. Okay, so let's see what else we have. I wanted to show you to convert a decimal to a percentage. So the one I just did was taking a percent and converting it to a decimal. You just divide the percent by 100, or if you want to think of it as just moving the decimal 2 spots to the left, do it like that. What about converting a decimal to a percent? So if you were going to convert a decimal to a percentage, just multiply that number by 100 and then stick the percent sign on it. So let's find one like that. So let's see this one. That's a decimal. 0.27 is a decimal. It doesn't have a percent sign on it. It is a decimal number. And then I want to convert it to a percent. All I would do is multiply that by 100 and add the percent. So if you want, you could use a calculator. Let's see. I need to take 0.27 and multiply it by 100 and then put a percent sign on it, and I'll get 27. Okay, so 27, that's 0.27 times 100, so that's 27, and stick a percent sign on it. So 0.27 is a decimal and 27% is the percentage form. Okay, so that's how you convert a decimal to a percent. So I'm seeing a pattern here. When we multiply by 100, we move the decimal in the number we're multiplying 2 spaces to the right. So 0.27 times 100, well, I could get my calculator and do that, but all that's going to happen is the decimal moves 2 spaces to the right. 0.27 times 100 is 27, okay? Or 27 point, decimal point 0. So that's how you do it. All right, so the overall pattern to convert a percent to a decimal: move this decimal point that's in the percentage 2 spaces to the left. To convert a decimal to a percent, move the decimal that's in the number 2 spaces to the right and add the percent. Okay? All right, so I want to find another problem here. So let's see, not this one. Not this one. Was it this one? No, 18 over 43. Okay. Can we convert the fraction 18 over 43 to a percent? How do you think you'd do that? Well, so I can take that fraction, 18 over 43, and I can make a decimal out of it. And then if I make it a decimal, I can do like this and turn it into a percent. And that's what this problem is asking for. Take the fraction and convert it to a percent. All right, so let's see. I'll get my calculator for this one. It's easy to divide by 100 because you just move the decimal point that's already there 2 spaces to the left, but 18 divided by 43 is not as simple. So let's just use our calculator and see what we get. 18 divided by 43 equals, and look at that giant number. See this? That's what I get. There's a lot of digits there. So how about this? I'll write down what I think is a reasonable number of digits. Okay, so I wrote 0.418604. That should be enough for what we need, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in the end of this problem. Okay, so that's a decimal. I divide to convert a fraction to a decimal, and then to convert a decimal to a percentage, I multiply that decimal number times 100%. And what will that do? If I multiply by 100, it'll move that decimal point that's already there 2 spaces to the right. 0.418604 becomes 41.8604. Okay? And so that's the percent. I forgot to write it. Let me write it. I want to make sure you see it. That's the percent. 41.8604%. All right, so that's what is going in here. Okay, but notice what it says here. Any of these problems have instructions for how to input your answer. This is the answer I got. All right, but what does it say? It says simplify your answer. Well, this can't be simplified anymore. But then it says round the final answer to 2 decimal places. So this is what I get just working with the numbers I have. But as far as what we're going to put in is going to be this answer to 2 decimal places rounding. Okay, so let's see. How do you round 41.8604 to 2 decimal places? Well, 6 is in the second decimal spot, and the next one is 0, so we leave that alone, right? There's another video I made about how to round numbers. That's how we would do it. So my answer is going to be, at least according to these instructions, 41.86%. Okay, all right, so we got that one. Let's look at maybe one more. Okay, so here, this is kind of a crazy problem, but we'll have to work with what it says. It says, can we rewrite this statement using percents? The population proportion of cats who like watching TV, if that possible, I don't know, but this is what it says, is somewhere between 15 out of 23 cats and 19 out of, so somewhere between 15 to 19 out of 23 cats like watching TV. Okay, so I want to convert this to the same statement, but with percentages. Okay, so like, how do you convert 15 over 23 to a percent, or 19 out of 23? Okay, and imagine there were 23 cats and they observed them watching TV, and maybe in one study they saw 15 of them seemed to pay attention to TV, and in the other study 19 of them, somewhere between there. So okay, we'll convert that to percentages like this. Remember the procedure? I'll divide and then I'll multiply by 100%. So I take 15, divide by 23, and I get, look at that number, 0.65217. So what is that converted to a percent? I would multiply this by 100%. What would that do? It would move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right. That would give me 65.21739%. Okay, so I'm going to type that in. 65 point, what was it? 21739%. So that's my number. 15 out of 23 is the same thing as 65.21% roughly. But what about the rounding? It says round final answer to 2 decimal places. Well, 65.21739% to 2 decimal places is 65.22%, right? Okay, that's rounding that number I got, doing all the work, to 2 decimal places. What about 19 over 23? What's that as a percentage? Okay, well, we'll find out this way. We'll take 19, we'll divide by 23. I get this number. What's that? That's a decimal. Okay, what is this decimal as a percentage? About 82%. Okay, just move the decimal place right 2 spaces to convert a decimal to a percent. So it's like 82.60869%. Okay, so let me type that in. 82.60869. Okay, now that's what I got, right? I did everything right. I divided 19 by 23, and then I moved the decimal right 2 spaces. That is how you get a percent. I get this giant number with all these decimal places. I typed some of them in, but remember, I'm supposed to round it to 2 decimal places. How do I round 82.608 to 2 decimal places? Well, okay, there's 3 decimal places. 0 is in the second decimal spot. 8 is in the spot just to the right. What does that make it? 82.608 is 82.61. All right, so somewhere between what this translates to, 65 to 82% of cats apparently like watching TV. All right, okay, and it's correct. So that's a assortment of problems that all of this common theme of percentages being parts out of 100, getting fractions, converting fractions to a percent, and so on. They're all playing on the same theme. But I think if you know what a percent is, and you saw this earlier video about reducing fractions and working with decimals, then hopefully like through this you could put it all together and work any problem with a fraction, a decimal, or a percent.